And so now I've got everything on Wi-Fi. Welcome, YouTube, to dfree Live. If you don't know me, my name is DeForest. My friends call me Buster. The IRS calls me DeForest. And I welcome all of you. This is the first time I've ever done a live presentation on 4 digital platforms at the same time. Oh, Periscope, thank you for coming back. YouTube, thank you for tuning in. Instagram, oh, look at all of our Instagram people. Hey, Verizon, good to see you. Good to see you, always good to see you. I'm going to call Texas when I finish this presentation tonight. All right, it's 7:02. Let's get started. Welcome again to this dfree Live update. We thought it was important to do tonight because of our scheduled event that was coming up that has now been canceled. I'll get to that in about 8 minutes. Let me begin at the beginning. In 2005, God led me to start a ministry at First Baptist where I serve and have served since 1990, and we called it dfree. We called it dfree because it was focused on financial freedom. It was focused on helping people achieve financial goals. It was my response to the fact that as a young man, I learned how to organize African Americans and people of goodwill around great causes like civil rights, great causes like housing opportunities, great causes like political campaigns. And I became an expert at organizing people to boycott, organizing people to elect people to office, organizing people around events. And even as a pastor at First Baptist, one of my strengths is being able to organize people towards the achievement of goals. And at the church for 15 years, between 1990 and 2005, I spent much of my effort not only preaching the gospel, teaching the Bible, and serving those who needed comfort. We spent a lot of time as a church redeveloping our community. We built housing for low and moderate income people. We created programs for young people. We created businesses and business loans. We had a microloan program with a local bank. We created a technology training program. We were the first faith-based green jobs training program in New Jersey. We created a statewide foster care and adoption agency. We were the only African-American organization to be licensed by the state to manage the adoption process for people who would take in children. We recruited and trained families to take in foster children. We gave permanent solutions to about 300 children who were adopted by members of our church and of our partner churches. And so we did a lot of work. But by 2005, it was clear to me that the missing link in my ministry and the great gap in the development of our community was personal and family financial strength. It's one thing to build a strong church that has created strong institutions, but it's I believe even more important to build strong individuals and families, because if you have institutional strength without individual strength, then I think the church has missed its mark. And so in 2005, we set out on this agenda to help our people achieve financial goals, establish financial strategies. I discovered in my own life when I was in my late 20s and early 30s that I had no financial strategy for my life. I had a strategy for politics, I had a strategy for protest, but I did not have a strategy for home ownership, for investing, for saving money, for improving my credit score. And if you've read my book, Say Yes to No Debt, you'll know that I needed a strategy. I won't go into why right now, but I can tell you that not only did I need a strategy then, but I've learned now that I'm not broke and I'm not in debt, I've learned that I still need a strategy. You cannot live in a world that requires the use of money and the exchange of goods and services without a strategy for achieving and for accomplishing in the financial realm. And so we started in 2005 a strategy based on my own experience. My experience was that I could not attain any financial strength until, first of all, I got out of debt. Debt means that I was spending more money than I was making. When I was in debt, it was because I could not wait until I could afford to buy something. I wanted it immediately, and so I used credit cards, and I paid 18 to 27% interest on credit cards for the right to have it right now. My debt was so high I couldn't even make the minimum payments. I even stopped opening my mail because I knew that I couldn't afford to pay the bill on the inside of the envelope. So for me, the first step to financial freedom was getting out of debt. And that's exactly what I did by the time I got married and went to the realtor to pick out our first house. The realtor asked us who did we owe. We told them we owed no one anything, and she said she had never met anybody who was debt-free before in her life. So that was the first step. The second step was to go without delinquencies. I was paying hundreds of dollars every month simply because I paid my bills late. If you've ever paid a bill late, you'll know that you are charged a late fee, whether it's your rent, whether it's your credit card, whether it's your furniture bill. And so I had to get my life organized so that I could pay my bills on time. Well, once I was out of debt, I had enough money to pay my bills every month. Then I needed the discipline and the structure and the order in my life to make sure I paid bills on time. Many months I paid bills late, not because I didn't have the money, but because I was just disorganized and I was sloppy with my living. And what we teach people in our ministry is how to get organized. You'd be surprised how much more money you will actually have if you just get organized. Somebody say organized. Organized. Now that I was organized, I had to have the discipline to live within my means, to live such that my income exceeded my expenses. I had to live on a budget. I needed a spending plan. That's what we call living without deficits. So since debt and delinquencies and deficits were my problem, my freedom required eliminating those three, and that's where we came up with dfree. D, debt, D, delinquency, D, deficits. And so we came up with the term dfree because my success has been attributable to the fact that I was free from those three Ds. But as we learned in the civil rights movement, when you're free from something, you got to be free to something. You know, God freed Israel from Egypt to the promised land. God freed black people from slavery to freedom. God frees us from debt, delinquencies, and deficits to deposits, making deposits in our own bank accounts. Half of our people, half of African Americans, either have no bank account at all or don't use the bank account for cashing checks and paying bills. So we are in the alternative financial system. So making deposits in our own bank accounts. In Dr. King's last speech, he assumed that black people had bank accounts and urged them to shift to open their bank accounts in an African American owned bank. But you can't shift what you don't have. Deposits. The second D, freedom two, is deeds. Not deeds as in actions, but deeds as in real estate. The deed for this house that I'm in has my name on it. And when you buy real estate, your name goes on a deed. And so that's the second. We want to encourage our people to have good credit, to be able to borrow money on assets that grow, to invest in multifamily houses so that your tenant can pay off most of your mortgage, to have real estate. People will always need a place to live. Land will never be expanded. God's not making any more land, and so to the extent that we want freedom and power, and we want to be able to leverage that freedom and power for our future generations, we need to invest in real estate. And then the third freedom 2D is dividends. I get checks every single month. These are dividends from investments that I own. And when you get checks from investments that you own, that's when your money's working for you rather than you simply working for money. We launched this ministry in 2005. We called it dfree, freedom from the negative Ds, freedom to the positive Ds. And frankly, we called it that because it just sounded cool. It was not a condemnation. No one was embarrassed to say, I'm trying to be dfree. So we just called it dfree, and we've been calling it dfree ever since 2005. In 2010, CNN came along right in the middle of the financial crisis that the whole world was experiencing. And when they heard about people at First Baptist paying off their cars and keeping their cars, paying off their student loans, getting rid of their credit cards because they had no more debt, they absolutely were amazed. Soledad O'Brien said to me, we're going to do Black in America 3 based on First Baptist and its ministry to people trying to save their homes, go to college, and find new work. And when she said that CNN was going to put us on television, and 14.9 million people ended up seeing it that year, I said, I better write this stuff down. I was taking notes from napkins. I was just doing Bible study. I mean, it wasn't formal. It was just kind of black churchy. And so I decided that I'd write a book. So I took off the month of August that year, 2010, and wrote the book. The first title was Breaking Free from Financial Slavery. And the book sold so well that my publisher decided to update the book and repackage it, republish it. And the second title for the book, the updated version, is Say Yes to No Debt. Now, of course, the ministry and the focus and the book is not just about debt, but here's the reality. It doesn't make sense to talk about investing. It doesn't make sense to talk about entrepreneurship. It really doesn't make sense to talk about marriage until you conquer the issue of debt. Now, for Christians, it's even more urgent because the Bible says that the borrower is slave to the lender, which means that if we didn't like slavery that was physical, we shouldn't support slavery that's financial. So here we are. 2010, I write the book. 2011, the book comes out. 2011, again, CNN rebroadcast the documentary. And from 2011 all the way through 2016, in fact, I got a call today from someone who was calling because he saw the documentary in 2011. We got calls mostly from churches asking us to help them do dfree in their churches. Now, if you've ever worked with churches, you know that you really had some work to do. I mean, working with churches is not easy. Most churches don't have staff. Most black churches don't have full-time pastors. And so we've dug in deeply, and thank God Credentials in 2012 came alongside of us and helped us spread our message to churches and create materials for churches. But for 5 years, from 2011 to 2016, we traveled the length and breadth of the country trying to help churches. We did a workbook because the churches said that your book is fine, but we need a workbook to go along with your book because a workbook allows us the opportunity to teach the book in class or Bible study or small groups. And so churches began taking the workbook and using the workbook. The book pretty much says what's possible. It tells my story. The workbook tells you how to get there. 12 steps to financial freedom. And each chapter has a story about a fictitious family whose problems you can solve. And frankly, if you can solve their problems, then you can use the solutions you gave them to solve your own problems. It has a scripture and a prayer. It has a little story from me that's not in the book. And then 6 commitments. Commitments like open a bank account. Commitments like talk to a professional. Don't just get your financial advice from the barbershop or the beauty shop. Talk to a licensed professional. And we are connected to licensed professionals who travel with us from Prudential, and they give people free financial consultations. All of this is in the workbook. So from 2011 to 2016, we would travel around the country. We visited conventions. I spoke for the National Baptist, for the AMEs, for the Progressive Baptist, for National Baptist Convention of America. We've spoken for Pentecostal Assemblies of the World. I and my team, led by Tamika Stembridge, have done training sessions. We've done live training sessions. We've done online training sessions. We've built out a website, and we've launched what we're calling a $1 billion challenge. I'll come to that towards the end of our time tonight. So we've been busy responding to needs. We've written more material. We finished writing a dfree supplement for senior citizens. So many people in their 80s are buying multiple copies of my book because they want to give them to their grandchildren, and they want to know how to have financial peace in the later years of their life. We also, in 2012, we started having a meeting every year for the churches that were involved in the dfree movement, churches from California to Florida to Chicago, to come to New Jersey and share stories, hear speakers, get new techniques. So for 4 years, 4 or 5 years, we did it right at our church in New Jersey, where we meet every week and we're open every day. We've had great artists come and sing. Fred Hammond has been there. I think Smokey Norfolk was there one year. So we have a concert and we have workshops. Great speakers. Miko Branch, the modern day Madam C.J. Walker. She owns Miss Jessie's. You know about her. Navarro Wright, who is a technological genius. We've had, of course, a prudential panel every year. We've had Obie McKenzie talking about the history of banking with not only a black perspective, but a biblical perspective. We've had so many great speakers. Our superstar speaker, of course, is our money coach, Lynn Califanti-Cox, who's written more books than I think I'll ever write. She's the money coach. She's an expert on having credit scores. She tells a story of how she got out of debt. She was $100,000 in debt. So we bring all these people together, and we meet in New Jersey, and we have New Jersey people there going to workshops. We have national people there. We have churches being trained. So that's what we've been doing, because the focus has been for 5 years to keep up and catch up with all of the requests that really came from the airing of the CNN special called Almighty Debt. I received a call today from the AME bishop over Washington, D.C., Virginia, North Carolina, and he's inviting us to come there in 2018. He's got 412 churches in his district, and he wants them to hear about dfree, be trained in dfree, as do Bishop Jackson in Georgia and Bishop McKenzie in Texas. So we spent a lot of time, and have spent a lot of time, and will spend a lot of time making sure the church fulfills its obligation to helping the people in our pews manage their money and reach their financial goals. There are still pastors, believe it or not, folks, there are still pastors who believe that God calls shepherds to serve the sheep, rather than sheep being called to make the shepherds rich. There's still pastors who believe that. Some of you are pastors right now. If you are a pastor who believes that it is the church's responsibility to help the sheep become financially free, send me a note on one of these platforms. If you're on Facebook, make a comment on Facebook. If you're on Instagram, make a comment on Instagram. In fact, you don't have to be a pastor. Just, if you're anybody, on Periscope, Twitter, Facebook, on YouTube, wherever you can make a comment, make the comment, because I need the devil to know that the church understands its mission with regard to serving people, particularly in the area of finance. So this year, we decided that we would do a few new things. We did a Young Money event in Atlanta, because we're testing strategies that take us beyond the church. We'll never leave the church. But how many people know you can't reach all black people in church? Amen. Not only can you not reach all black people in church, there's no need to. I mean, we're everywhere. We do everything. And we want to take the same message, but take it more broadly than the pulpit and the pews. So we did that. We also we had a session. In fact, we're having a session tomorrow night for young men. We've had sessions for young women. We've had sessions for senior citizens. So in 2017, with the help of our partners in Virginia, we call them Stand Together, they supported our efforts to reach out. We upgraded and expanded our website. We upgraded the Billion Dollar Challenge website, and I'll tell you about the podcast in a second. So we expanded, and we decided that we would take this annual meeting of the people who gather from around the country to Atlanta instead of having it in New Jersey. So the National dfree Conference was really conceived to gather the people in the churches around the country who are involved in dfree. We have now, I just got back from Africa. I was there for a week and a half, and when I came back, I looked at our circumstances, looked at our options, looked at our realities, and I decided that the best way to prepare for this next season would be to cancel the meeting in Atlanta. Now, why did I decide that? Number one, it is increasingly true that the pastors that are most committed to dfree around the country are also the busiest pastors in the country. You know, there's an old saying, if you want someone to do something, call a busy person, because people who are not busy are not waiting for you to make them not busy. And so we discovered year after year that the most dedicated and the most passionate pastors in the country who are on fire with dfree, who have testimonies, Pastor Swan in Virginia, Pastor Quick in Vallejo, California. These pastors are busy, and increasingly at this time of the year, we are finding that it's literally inconvenient for pastors to stop what they're doing right before Thanksgiving and fly anywhere, New Jersey, Atlanta, Chicago. So that's the first thing that's just real. The second thing we discovered is that churches are still having financial challenges. All of the conventions, all of the national conventions are finding it challenging to get their churches to sponsor delegates and pastors and other members to attend their conventions. Because if you have to choose between paying your mortgage as a church during a particular month and sending a group of people to a convention, you don't have to pray about that. You have to pay your mortgage. And so in consideration of churches having to be fiscally responsible, or dfree, if you will, themselves, we wanted to decrease the pressure on churches by not requiring that they come and spend money to meet us anywhere. The third thing we discovered was that our challenge is huge. Our challenge is much huger than I had ever anticipated. There are 40 million African Americans in the country. 20 million about are adults. The rest are children. Of the 20 million, 35% of us have a negative net worth. We just don't have any money at all. Most of us will not have more than $25,000 saved for retirement. We have the highest bankruptcy rate. We have the lowest savings rate. That we have enjoyed having time with churches. We have enjoyed hanging out with pastors and church leaders in Atlanta and in Chicago. We were in the middle of Louisiana, Ville Platte, Louisiana, some months ago, and we were with 73 churches invited there by Pastor Talbot of the National Baptist Convention of America. He and his team put together a dfree weekend in Ville Platte, Louisiana. I'd never heard of Ville Platte, Louisiana. And we were there for 2 days. We trained, we inspired, we talked to pastors, we talked to leaders, 73 churches from one state over a 2-day period. It was a marvelous experience. But as good as it feels, and as gratifying as it is to hear these testimonies, to see these pictures, to see these graduations. I spoke at a dfree graduation in Washington, D.C. 113 people had finished the dfree program in their churches, and they invited me to come there to speak. You can't imagine how wonderful it is as an author, as a leader, as a pastor, to have person after person after person shaking your hand with tears in their eyes, hugging your neck, thanking you for your work. It's a wonderful feeling. But I and my team have decided we can't just have wonderful feelings for ourselves. I mean, it's a wonderful feeling to get 1,000 people in a room and to celebrate and have our sponsors there and everybody feels good and we go home. But here's the reality. 35% of African Americans are completely broke. 35, that's 1 out of 3. 54% have no bank accounts or have a bank account they don't use, which means that we have got to come out of our comfort zone. We meaning dfree, the dfree team, the dfree staff. We've got to come out of our comfort zone and not consider a meeting with 500 people or 1,000 people success, because there are too many African Americans and too many other Americans that need to understand the path to financial freedom. So here's what we decided. We decided that we would take the meager resources that we have. I mean, we're not rich. We have some funds, but we want to get the biggest bang for our funds. And we've decided that what we're going to do is to spend most of our time, most of our effort, and most of our resources on reaching people through digital platforms, through Facebook, through Instagram, through Periscope and Twitter, and through YouTube. Now, I should have known this really last summer. One of our newest and youngest staff persons, Kate, came in last summer, and she said, you need to do a Facebook Live. I had never heard of Facebook Live. I didn't know there was live Facebook presentations. And we did a Facebook Live. We just sat in the backyard. I talked for 20 minutes, and I reached 240,000 people. I received a report yesterday that our digital outreach through Google had reached up to 1 million people. And I made a strategic decision that rather than investing heavily in live events that make you feel good and make people cry, that what we have to do is take a strategic shift and develop more content and more information and create more access through cell phones, through iPads, and if people still use laptops, through laptops. I'll give you an example. We put out our initial test online academy course. I took the whole dfree course, put it online, 3 brief videos per step. That means I recorded 36 videos with 1 introductory video. And without spending any more money, we put it on the platform that you get to through the website, mydfree.org. You go to mydfree.org, you click dfree Academy, and over 1,300 people have signed up in the last 5 months with no advertising at all. 1,300 people who can now go through dfree in the privacy of their homes for free, which means that the dfree Academy gives us the potential to put more content, more courses online so that you can access it through an app, and we're going to develop a mobile app that'll take you directly to your dfree destination. And we can take all of our speakers and all of our presenters and all the people that travel around the country with us. We have a guy who lives in, I think it's Las Vegas, who is an absolute expert on how to buy a car, actually on how not to buy a car. This guy in 1 hour can tell you more about how to buy a car than I can tell you about the Bible. The guy's just an expert. Well, a guy like that is not only a great resource to have, but we owe it to you to make him more available than simply showing up at one of our events like he did in California and speaking to 500 people. We have, as I mentioned, Lynn Califani Cox. And so we're going to develop content that can be distributed digitally. If Netflix can reach millions of people every single day without having a theater, dfree plans to reach millions of people every day without having you get in your car or get on a plane and fly to an event. Now, I'll tell you something else that we've tested. We've begun producing podcasts. You know, radio stations aren't always interested in our kind of content, but I don't know about you. I listen to more podcasts than I listen to radio. And so our weekly podcast has begun, In the Black. And that podcast will be distributed digitally so that when you're working out, when you're driving your car, you can feed yourself with dfree financial content, content about investments, content about student loan repayments, content about interest rate reductions, content about student loan deferments, content. That's the dfree podcast, In the Black. Then we're going to take all of our experts, all of the experts that we normally trot around the country, and we're going to produce digital programming using their knowledge and distribute that through our website and through various digital platforms. We plan to reach and impact and influence 25% of the adult population of African Americans and 10% of the youth. We plan to create apps that are digital games, gaming for young people so that they can play a video game, play a game on their phone, and they think they're just playing a game, but they'll be learning about money, because we'd like to get to a large group of young people before they get into debt. We want them to know before they get to college, don't take the credit card when you step on campus. Now, the big announcement that my staff doesn't even know about, this is the first time my staff has heard about this. They'll probably gasp for breath or drop dead or call each other and say, did you know that? I'm in the process of negotiating to purchase space where we're going to have our own media production facility, the dfree media production facility, where we can create our own programming, where we will have our own cameras, our own set. It'll be like our own little TV media studio, and we will invite our guests to come there for live streams and live broadcasts. We will do production, pre-production, post-production, and all of the other experts and ministries and bloggers and writers and contributors that are going to be a part of our dfree website will be invited to come there to produce programming. We need all of the experts, all of the activists. We need all of the advocates, all of the pastors, all of the scholars, all of the professors who really have a passion for economic empowerment among our people to have as much content distributed as possible. And that's going to happen in 2018. So our In the Black podcast will not only be an audio podcast, but a video podcast so that you can tune in and either hear us or see us or both. So we started the transition. We were going to begin this strategy in January, but as we looked at the resources that we have remaining for this year, it became obvious to me and to my team that we should take the resources that we still have in our hands, and rather than pour them into an event that takes time and money out of other people's lives, pour them into resources and content that can really be used in schools, in churches, in prisons, in senior citizen buildings, and in family life. To launch this new digital dfree presentation, we're going to have a dfree online marathon. It's going to be 8 hours of nonstop me. 8 hours of me nonstop. Now, I'll stop for some physical relief. Definitely will do that. But we're going to go from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. on that Friday, November 10th, Friday, November 10th, 10 a.m. to 6 p.m. Facebook Live will be the primary platform, but as best we can, we're going to stream on YouTube, on Instagram, and on Periscope throughout the day. We're going to talk about the $1 Billion Challenge. I'm challenging, now listen to this, because we're really ready for this. I'm challenging 125,000 people to pay off $8,000 in debt. If 125,000 people pay off $8,000 of debt, that's $1 billion in debt being paid off. Now, if I have $8,000 to pay debt, I'm not talking about bills. I'm talking about debt. I'm talking about credit cards, installment plans. I'm talking about those cards they give you when you go to Macy's and they say, I'll give you 10% discount if you take one of my cards. I went to Banana Republic last week, and 10% discount was significant. So if I have $8,000, do you know if you took the $8,000 that you used to pay in credit card bills and just bought $100,000 in life insurance? $100,000. $8,000, by the way, can probably pay 5 or 6 years premium on life insurance. Now you have $100,000 in life insurance. You have the money because you've stopped having to pay credit card bills. And when you die, the person that gets that $100,000 will no longer be one of those statistics that describe the gap between white wealth and black wealth, because if a black person has $100,000 to $120,000, they are basically equal to the average white person's net worth. Now let's step back a little further. If 125,000 people buy $100,000 in life insurance, that's $12.5 billion in assets that was able to be created by paying off $1 billion in debt. Suppose they buy $200,000 in life insurance. That's $25 billion in assets. If you want black America to close the wealth gap, it's not going to come by lottery. It's not going to come by prayer. It's not going to come by saving. We can't save enough money to close the gap. It's going to come by leaving something behind that we didn't have and our children do. And so on November the 10th, I'm going to invite as many people as will sign up to not only sign up for the $1 Billion Challenge. We have some celebrities that we're going to announce. We've got some institutions that we're going to introduce, because not only are we asking individuals to sign up, we want groups to sign up. So on November the 10th? November the 10th, I'll be on Facebook from 10 to 6 p.m. We'll promote it. I want you to sign up. We're going to invite you to help us pay down $1 billion in debt. I'm going to be recruiting some dfree ambassadors. We need people in Illinois, in Florida, and California to join our team of people that will tweet and retweet. We're forming a digital army to make sure that our digital content gets into the hands of the people that you know and the people that they know. I'll be announcing that on November the 10th. That night, by the way, we were going to have J.J. Hairston. You know J.J. Hairston. He sings that song that 30 million people have watched on YouTube. You Deserve It. My Hallelujah Belongs to You. Instead of having him in Atlanta, since we're not having a conference, we're going to have him at First Baptist on that same night, since we had already booked him, and he's going to come to help me launch my 27th pastoral anniversary at the church. But we're going to give special premium tickets with reserved seating to people that qualify and connect with us during the day and who obviously live within walking or driving distance of the church. So that's November 10th, from 10 a.m. to 6 p.m., and then we're going to lay out our 2018 strategy for the digital dfree outreach. Now, I will make some personal appearances. We're going to Jamaica the second week in January. You can join us there if you want. The government of Jamaica has invited us to come there to launch dfree in Jamaica. I'll be going to the Pentecostal assemblies of the world, and the team will be there training. I'll be preaching. We're going to the 2nd Episcopal District, Washington, D.C., in Greensboro. I'll be preaching. We'll be teaching there. So we'll be making some personal appearances, but we're going to invest the lion's share of our meager resources in creating content that mature people can use in their churches, in their communities, among their families. We'll have online training. We've perfected the art of doing online training. Our executive director's done a great job at producing training for trainers, people who will teach dfree in their local settings. So all of that's going to happen on November the 16th, and I'll also spend some time helping people with their specific financial challenges. On the 10th, people will be able to ask questions. We'll refer people. We'll have professional, licensed financial experts on standby so that when you ask questions that I'm not qualified to answer, we can plug you into them and you can go offline and start talking. So I think I've said enough. I thank you for joining me. We're going live through digital platforms starting November 10th. Somebody say November 10th. And we're looking forward to you joining the movement. It's been hard up until now because we have spent thousands of dollars and dozens of hours traveling the length and breadth of this country trying to touch people. Now, we're not going to stop touching people, but we'll never get to 5 million people by foot. And so we made a decision. We're happy about that decision. Anyone who registered for the Atlanta conference will be redepositing your registration fee. It was only $20. We'll be redepositing your registration fee if we have not done so already. But I thank God for a great team of young people who are dedicated to this cause. I'm grateful to God for churches and leaders around the country who had planned to come to Atlanta. And I'm so grateful that you gave me some time tonight to explain where we've been, where we are, and where we're going. I apologize to my staff for shocking you with this announcement, but your checks will cash just as well being shocked as they would if you weren't shocked. So thank you so much. For more information, certainly you can go to our website, www.mydfree.org. You can send us email, you can ask questions, but certainly pray for us as we take this mission to a higher level and as we ask God to take us to deeper depths. All right, thank you. I'm going to sign off now, one by one. Goodbye, Facebook. Goodbye, Facebook. Thank you for joining me tonight. Goodbye. Yes, goodbye, Facebook. Goodbye. Periscope. Goodbye, Periscope. Thank you. Thank you for thanking me. And now, finally, who is this? Instagram. Goodbye, Instagram. Thank you for joining me. And who is this? YouTube. Thank you, YouTube. God bless you.